This was the race NASCAR was looking forward to, the whole sport was looking forward to, maybe some dreading it, maybe some excited to see how the package was going to work out. It turned out fine in the end. I'll talk about that a little bit later on. I missed the whole stage one, which was apparently the most boring part of the race, so not much I missed there. I think Harvick got up to like a 5-second lead, I heard, and never really looked back and won stage number one. Stage two looked like got a little more competitive, whatnot. We had some pit strategy throughout, some passing throughout. Kyle Busch had a speeding penalty in the middle of stage two to go to the back of the field and ended up with Joey Logano then because of that speeding penalty winning stage number two. If not, I think Kyle definitely would have won stage number two without his speeding penalty. And then stage three heated up as well with some drivers trying to move through the field, whatnot, some passes being made, some green flag pit stops once again. This was the first race which only had stage yellows as the cautions. I'll talk about that a little bit later on as well. But in the end, it was a Penske battle between Joey Logano and Brad Keselowski, and it ended up with Logano barely beating Keselowski out on a last lap charge by Keselowski, which was very similar to how Martin Truex Jr. gained on Brad Keselowski last race at Atlanta. But so about the race. I thought it was a good race. I don't think it was great. I don't think it was the best thing ever. I think any type of package maybe could have produced a race like that. It was just a good race. Not one driver had the best car. There was passing, whatnot. And I think something like the most green flag passes in Las Vegas Motor Speedway's history or something like that. There were a lot of passes. So that's... about the package, though. I didn't like, once again, this was something I did not like. Dirty air was huge, more than it has been. Once again, I just felt like dirty air with a gigantic spoiler, whatever it is, because there's so much downforce. I don't know what the reason is for it. But I felt like dirty air was such a huge factor during the race. I saw, watching on Race View, throughout the race, cars would catch lappers, the leaders would catch lappers, they would lose tenths, even seconds at times. I think it was Logano who caught Newman in the middle of stage two, and Kyle was close right on to Logano, and then Kyle got around, and then Logano, once Kyle got caught by Newman, got right back around Kyle. So in my mind, there is a lot of work to be done in terms of the dirty air on these cars. Kyle Busch described it well. After the interview, or after the race, in his interview, he said that, when I was in third running down those guys, I was running 31 second flat, and once I caught them, I ran 31.40s. So basically saying that, once he got into their wake, once he got into their dirty air, he could not make any progress forward and basically fell back, and could never really make a charge onto them, which is something that needs to be addressed, because I feel like that the dirty air is a huge issue with these cars. I don't know what it is, but I feel like it's more of an issue that has been in the past. Like in the past few years, there's been dirty air. I don't think it's been as bad as it has been here so far in 2019, though, because I just saw it. I feel like whenever our race leaders came up onto lap traffic, no matter two cars, how slow they were, one car, it seemed like it affected a lot. Austin Dillon, I feel like, affected the end of this race as well. He was kind of in the middle of Logano and Keselowski. Then he passed Logano, and then Keselowski closed into within a few tenths of the 22. It had been like 8 tenths or something. It closed down to like 4 tenths. And then they caught Dillon back. Logano got around. Then Dillon basically ran side by side with Keselowski, which actually slowed them down. And Keselowski went from about 4 tenths back to 8 tenths back, and then fell to about a second back, and then charged up late because of lap traffic, but couldn't do anything with the 22, his teammate. He made a charge in 3 and 4, tried a slide job, but I mean, Logano, it's going to be hard to pull a move like that because they're barely lifting with these cars. There's so much downforce on the cars, so there's not as much horsepower that that there is some lifting. They don't have to lift a lot though. I mean, that they Boyer at one point during the race, they told him, hey, maybe you should start running high. It seems like the guys are making time on the high side. And he goes, why in the effing hell would I try and run high and wide open? I'm going to be wide open up there and wide open down here. What's the difference? So I don't think they're wide open for a few laps after it, though. They're not as wide open, but they're still pretty wide open. I mean, they're just feathering the throttle a little bit. And I don't know. I'm still going to reserve judgment until about Texas or Kansas which is when, teams got time to work with the package, either make it better or make it worse, whatever it may be. I don't know. But another interesting note about this race was that it had 19 lead changes during the race, which is one of the I wouldn't say one of the all-time high for Las Vegas, because there has been a lot in the 20s. I mean, last year's fall race had 23. A few seasons ago had 20. So, I mean, the most at Las Vegas is 28. This one had 19. It was a lot more than the spring race last year, which had 11, with Kevin Harvick dominating that race. That race was pretty bad. Let me tell you, that was a low light of 2018. Was the first Las Vegas race. The second Las Vegas race was actually really good last year. I think it was actually better than the one we had here today. But so this race was good. It wasn't bad. It wasn't great. I'll just say it was good. It was a good stepping stone for NASCAR. Steve Liddell admitted after the race they were really disappointed with what they saw in Stage 1. Stage 2 and 3 they thought was actually better than they expected after Stage 1. And once again, another thing that I like to go back to, this is the first season without an in-car track bar adjuster since 2014. Is that making a difference in terms of the racing? I don't know. I feel like, though, that is a huge difference in why some cars are getting worse over the longer haul, and why maybe we're seeing some more comers and goers or cars fading throughout the race. We saw Kevin Harvick, early on at Atlanta, he looked really fast. He looked like he was going to be the car to beat, but his car kind of went away from him. He never really got back into a position to where he was going to win. Same at Las Vegas. He dominated Stage 1, got to a 4.5-second lead. But once the track started changing, he didn't have the tools inside the car to adjust it on the fly just like that. He had to wait for pit stops and didn't get to try stuff inside the car. So maybe the adjustments they made weren't exactly perfect, and he had to just handle with it, which I feel like is something that improves the racing. When you don't have, when you can't just change how your car handles with like that with snap of your finger. I feel like it improves the overall quality of the racing. So is that a reason we're seeing some better racing? In my opinion, I think it is a reason, whether it be the package or not the package, or both the track bar and the package, or just the track bar. I don't know. But I think the fact of the matter is that not having an in-car track bar adjuster helps the racing. An in-car track bar adjuster, I feel like, hurt the quality of the racing from 2015 to 2018. I feel like if we used the 2016 package without an in-car track bar adjuster, if we used last year's package without an in-car track bar adjuster, I feel like it would have been better racing than what we saw those years. Even though we did have some good races last year, some good races in 2016, I feel like there were some races where Harvick maybe got out front and just whenever his car got bad, used the in-car track bar adjuster, and the car immediately got better and it never got bad. I feel like that's something that happened over the course of the last few years, and it's something that I'm glad is gone, and I think it's something that will help improve the racing no matter what the package is. If the package sucks, I feel like it could actually make the racing better, because good cars will get bad at some point. That's the whole thing about, do you set your car for the long run, the short run, and then if you don't have anything to adjust it for, then, that's how it will be. Other stuff about the race, as I mentioned, 19 lead changes, the most green flag passes in Las Vegas history, apparently. But I think that also can tie in to the fact of the fact that there were no natural cautions in this race for the first time since October of 2002 in the EA Sports 500 at Talladega. So that's right. This is the first race since 2002 that has not had a natural caution during it. The only two cautions that came out were the stage yellows. Those yellows that are automatically thrown by NASCAR. So we had no incidents on the racetrack whatsoever. The first race since 2002 for that to happen. And I feel like that also improved the amount of green flag passes we saw. Las Vegas, normally, you get some cautions, it mixes up, it kind of breaks up the longer runs, end up having a pit stop under yellow flag. Well, during this race, we had a ton of green flag pit stops, which I feel like also does improve the passing stats, but I still think there were a good amount of passes with the package as well. I don't think it was the greatest thing ever. It was a good race, it wasn't bad, it wasn't great. And I feel like that's something that needs to be beat down to people's heads. A race can just be good. It doesn't have to be bad. It doesn't have to be great. I feel like that there are two extremes to NASCAR from what I've seen on Twitter. There are the people who are saying, this sucks, why the heck, it's terrible. And then there are others that are like, this is great, this is the best thing ever. And I calm down. I mean, just wait. we'll have to see. There's some people that are already whining about it and crying about it. There are also some people that are already making it out to be the best thing ever. Some of the things that happen during that race can happen during any race. It just depends on, under any package, under any race, just depends on, what the factors are in terms of it. But also another thing is that there were no, as I said, no cautions for, wrecks or spins or whatever. I think that has a lot to do with how the car is now. So NASCAR, with the car, they added more downforce, bigger spoiler, more downforce, whatever it is. That, I think, has made the cars easier to drive just a little bit, even though it is still pretty hard in turbulence and dirty air and whatever. I feel like they are easier to drive. They're planted to the ground. They're kind of, stuck to the ground. I feel like that is a reason why we didn't see any natural cautions during the race. They are racing closer together, but I feel like, the cars, they just aren't as loose as they used to be. They aren't as hard to drive as they used to be. And, I feel like that kind of does impact, the racing a little bit. It'll make the restarts more crazy because drivers are going to be like, well, it's going to be hard to crash. If I get sideways a little bit, I think, I feel like if a car gets sideways a little bit, that rear end with how big the spoiler is or whatever, I feel like it will just kind of save the car itself. There's always been that thing of, when Richard Petty drove with that gigantic wing on it, he would get sideways, but that huge wing on the back would just kind of save the car, and he would be off going straight again. I feel like that's maybe a case which happens with the spoiler. I honestly am not that far into engineering and physics and stuff like that to really understand why or what's causing it, but I feel like the cars are easier to drive than they have been the past few years, mainly because they've added more downforce back. They've gave them a bigger spoiler. The last few years we've had a really, really small spoiler, which has made the cars hard to drive, which equals less on throttle time, which I feel like makes for better racing. Maybe it doesn't, but I feel like, in my opinion, the more you have to allow through the corner, the better the racing is going to be. Because that's more area for someone to gain. If you're just holding it wide open or close to wide open, there's not a lot of area for a person to gain. The only reason they're going to gain is because of the draft down the straightaways. And I feel like we saw that a lot, and maybe some different lines run as well. But that is my opinion, reaction, review of the 2019 Pennzoil 400. It was a different race for sure. I feel like, it's not. It was good. Once again, wasn't the best thing I've ever seen. I've seen better races. I've seen worse races. So we'll just have to see how this package goes on. Next week, they are going back to the 2018 rules with the 750 horsepower, and but they're still using that gigantic spoiler on the back. So Phoenix will be using, 2018 rules with the gigantic spoiler on the back, and then we'll be going to Auto Club, which is using this package once again. So that will be an interesting one. It's a bigger racetrack, more grooves to run, wider track overall, and then we get some short tracks and whatnot. And then Texas and Kansas, I feel like, will be the big telling points. Texas will be just after they come back from the West Coast swing, so they'll have some time to kind of tweak on their 1.5 mile cars. And then Kansas, they have a few races between Texas and Kansas to work on 1.5 mile cars as well, try and make them better and maybe stinking up the racing, because I feel like that is something that might happen. Some of the best teams might put more money into this and find a way to make the package bad, So we'll just have to see how it goes, though. 2019 off to a good start, I guess you could say. Daytona, Atlanta, Vegas, all good races. Daytona 500, one of the better 500s in the past few years. Atlanta was typical of Atlanta, good racing throughout. Las Vegas, one of the better races there in recent memory. So I thank you guys for watching. I'll see you guys for the next video.